You've learned how to cut crown molding, but maybe you've never tried some of the more intricate cuts you see here. On this little sample piece, you'll see we've got some in and out cuts there, and especially at the size they are, looks like they'd be really tough to do on a miter saw. To be honest, they're really simple, and I've got a technique to show you. So what we're going to do is go over to the miter saw and show you how to make cuts. In this case, how a left outside corner and a right inside corner, and on this side, a right outside corner resulting in a left inside corner are easy, and especially when the material is laid flat. So let's go to the miter saw and I'll show you how to do it. To make these cuts, I'm going to use this template, and I make a set of templates to align the miter saw. If you want to learn how to make these templates, you can just check Wood Magazine issue 247, and we've kind of listed how to make them and how to use them. This is my right outside corner. On my templates, I provided a black line, sometimes on the top, sometimes on the bottom. This black line always goes up against the fence, and it allows me to set my bevel on the back to 33.9 and slide my miter either left or right until it matches 31.6. Those two settings currently are what that cut's going to make. So now I know I've got my miter saw set up. I'm going to replace this template with a clean piece of trim, positioned the same way, and make a cut. So here's that same piece of trim, and I'm just going to make that first cut. Now you'll see with that left is a beautiful right outside corner. On that little sample I showed you earlier, where we had the left inside and outside corners, that more unique piece of trim, those little offsets, I'll call them, were about 1 inch. So to make a little offset that has a right outside corner and a left inside corner is really easy when it's done flat. So the way to do it is first make sure your piece of trim is butted up against the saw blade. That's that cut that I just made. And I'm going to put a mark on this piece of trim. In my case, it's pretty nice. I've got a miter saw with all these little hash marks in the back, and they're set about 1/4 inch apart. If you don't have one on yours, that's fine. Just make a mark on the back fence, make a mark in your trim, and then you'll be able to do the same thing. So we're just going to make a mark here. And if I want that little offset to be 1 inch long, all I have to do is move that mark 1 inch closer to the blade. So in other words, I'm going that way, closer to the blade. And because I've got an 1/8 inch blade on my miter saw, which is pretty standard, I want to account for that. So I'm going to move it another 1/8 of an inch. So all I've done is taken that first cut and moved it closer to the blade by the length that I want that finished piece. When I make the cut, I'll have an outside left or outside right and an inside left corner. So let's make that cut. Now, a couple of things. First is we now have an outside right and an inside left corner, and the beauty of laying something flat is that that piece didn't fly away. It lies perfectly on the saw, and it's got a beautiful finished edge on both corners. So now I've got one of those offsets. I need to make the opposite side, and for that we're going to use the next template. So in that case, I'm going to use my left outside crown. On the back of this you'll see there's a mark on the bottom on this one that always goes up against the fence. The bevel always stays at 33.9, and in this case you'll see I have to move the miter around to 31.6 on the other side so that that's the correct cut. And again, knowing that my miter is now positioned correctly, I can take this template off, put a new piece of material on in that same position, and again make that first cut. And leaving that right where it is, I'll take a little mark here, move that 1 inch closer to the blade, and again 1/8 of an inch to account for the offset, and make the second cut. And there is the complementary side to that miter. Now let's go back over the workbench and I'll show you how all of these things fit together. Now I've got the pieces that we just cut at the miter saw back at the table, and I want to show you how they lay out. So if we take our template, which will serve as our right outside corner, and take one of those little pieces, you'll see how it matches up against that edge. It's actually pretty cool. Beautiful joint. And now, if I can figure out a way to hold that and put it up against my other sample of a left inside corner, you're going to see how well that joint went together. And what it's doing is showing you that's the same thing that you saw here. It's really simple, and I think what it's going to do is really increase your desire to try something a little bit more unique. Compound miters are not that hard to cut. Compound crown molding miters are even easier when cut flat on the miter saw. This is simple. Give it a try.